Take a look at writing two-step equations today. Our objective is I can solve equations with variables on one or both sides of the equation. Today's lesson is going to be more focused on writing equations, but we will do a little bit of solving as well. So let's jump right into the steps here with this example problem that we have. It says, imagine you're wanting to go to a 2-week summer basketball camp, but the total cost of the camp is $700. Your parents have agreed to pay the deposit of $400 if you pay the rest in weekly payments of $15. How many weekly payments will you have to make? So the first thing is we're going to do today is define the variable. This isn't technically told we have to do this in the instructions, but it's still good for us to pick something to stand for the missing value here and to write what that stands for. So we might say, it says at the end here, how many weekly payments we have to make. So because it ends with that question, we know that that's going to be the thing we're looking for. So maybe we would say W equals weekly payments. Then step number 2 is just for us to translate these words into an equation. And since we're writing two-step equations, you want to make sure that there are two operations with the variable. That's going to be one thing we want to look for. There's not a great way to say you do it this way every time with these because each situation could be a little bit different. So you really just have to read and understand the situation and think about what operations you'll have to do for that. So a couple different ways to write this that would be correct. But let's just start with where the problem starts, which is the total cost of the basketball camp, $700. So $700 is going to be equal to, says your parents have agreed to pay the deposit of $400. So we know it's going to be at least $400. Your parents made that one-time payment, plus you're going to make weekly payments of $15. But you're not doing that just one time. It's not just 1 week. It's going to be times a certain number of weeks. We don't know how many weeks, so we used W to stand for how many weekly payments you'd have to make. So times W. So the $400 plus 15 times a certain number of times will equal the $700 for the camp altogether. Now it said to write and solve the equation, so we have to solve this now. We worked on solving two-step equations last lesson, so this is something we know how to do. We're going to start over here with the variable, and we want to undo the two operations over there with it. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take away this $400 deposit that your parents make. So we're going to subtract that from the situation, and that leaves us with $300 that you have left to pay in weekly payments. You're paying $15 a week times a certain number of weeks. I'm going to rewrite that over here so I've got room to show how this solves here. So now we just have to take that the 15 being multiplied times the W there divided by 15, and what this is doing is it's taking that $300 that you have left to pay and dividing it into groups of 15 to see how many weeks you'll have to do that. So 300 divided by 15 is 20, so 20 equals W. We'll rewrite that as W equals 20. So you have to make 20 weekly payments. That's a long time. You're talking about 4.5, 5 months there of saving up and paying that off, but you're only paying $15 a week, and maybe it's really worth it to you to go to this summer basketball camp. So we got the equation, and then we're going to write our solution, W equals 20. So this is our whole answer here, was the original equation and its solution, because the instructions are to write and solve. We're not going to be solving all of them today, so let's take a look at some of these together problems. And a lot of them are just going to be to translate each sentence into an equation. So we're going to be doing that for 1 through 3, and then number 4, we're going to write and solve an equation for that one. Okay, so for the first one here, it says 15 equals 3 less than 6 times a number. We really need to just basically follow along with the order of things. There are a couple times when we will change the order because of how things are phrased. But if it says 15 equals, we can write 15 equals. Then it says 3 less than 6 times a number. You really need to pay attention to this more than, or when it says less than phrasing. because if it says more than or less than something, we actually need to write the something else first, whatever comes after it first, and then add to that or subtract to that, depending on if it says more than or less than. If we want to know what something, 3 less than something is, we need to put the something else first and then take away that 3. So you got to be really careful with the order when it says more than or less than. It's 3 less than 6 times a number, so we need to take the 6 times a number first. You can use any variable for that. I'm just choosing n. And then we want to take 3 less than that, so minus 3. So you're going to watch out as we continue to go through these problems when it says more than or less than to write whatever comes after it, after that phrase first, and then take more than or less than that. So number 2 is 10 increased by the quotient of a number and 6 is 5. So we can start with 10, and 10 is going to be increased by a certain amount, so plus the quotient of a number and 6. So the quotient, is the answer to a division problem, so the quotient of a number, some number, divided by 6. And I want you to show division again with a fraction or a fraction bar. That's usually how in algebra we will see division written. Anytime, well, almost anytime you see is, that's saying basically is equal to, so equals 5. We just translated those words into an equation there. 10 increased by the quotient of a number and 6, n divided by 6 is equal to, or is 5. Number 3, the difference of twice a number and 3 is 11. So the difference is the answer to a subtraction problem. So the difference of twice a number would be double the amount of a number. So the best way to handle that probably would be to multiply it by 2, right? So the difference of twice a number, so 2 times some number, and 3. We're looking for the difference between those, so we're going to subtract 2n minus 3 is 11. We're not asked to solve these equations, we're just asked to translate them into an equation, so that's all we're doing for these. But on number 4 here, the last one of the together problems, it says write and solve an equation to solve the problem. It says suppose the current temperature is 54 degrees. It is expected to rise 2 degrees each hour for the next several hours. In how many hours will the temperature be 78 degrees? So we'll start with the current temperature of 54. It's expected to rise, so plus 2 degrees. And it says for each hour and for the next several hours. We don't know how many hours it's going to be, which we probably got a little bit ahead of ourselves. We should define our variable here. It says in how many hours will the temperature be, so we're looking for how many hours, so h equals hours. We probably should have done that first, but that's okay. So 2 times a certain number of hours. We don't know how many hours it's going to be, so 2 times h. In how many hours will the temperature equal or be 78 degrees, so equals 78. So there's our equation, starting temperature plus 2 times a certain number of hours, and the final temperature will be 78. We can now figure out what the number of hours will be by solving this equation. So we're going to start by subtracting, because here's our variable right there. We're going to get rid of what we can get rid of with addition or subtraction first. So that cancels out. And what this does is basically it finds how much the temperature went up, right? We're finding the difference between the starting temperature and the finishing temperature there, the ending temperature, to figure out how much the temperature change happened throughout the day. It was a temperature difference of 24 degrees. So let's rewrite this over here, 2h equals 24. So we can take that 24 degrees that it changed altogether, and since it's being multiplied by 2, we'll divide by 2. So we're saying we know it's going to go up 2 degrees every hour. So take that 24 degrees, divide it into groups of 2, and that will tell us how many hours it took. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So h equals 12. Here is our final solution here with the original equation. So original equation and its solution took 12 hours. And we didn't do this on the example problem, but you can plug in your answer to check to make sure that that's correct. So we can plug in the 12 here. 54 plus 2 times 12 is 24. So 54 plus 24 equals 78. So we know that our answer is correct. So we'll do some more of these in class. We'll talk about these on your own problems and do a little more writing 2-step equations. We'll see you guys in class.